Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to Austria for the first time in what seems like absolutely ages. I hardly get to review any beers from Austria, and I think it's mainly just because we don't see very much of them. You know, Austria's right next to Germany and the Czech Republic, which export a hell of a lot of beer. The Austrian stuff just doesn't leave their country in the same volume that the German and Czech beers do, unfortunately. So I need to get down there and actually try a few of the different Austrian beers, and I know there's quite a thriving craft scene down there now, as well as the more sort of traditional beers, so I definitely need to get down there and have an explore of that beautiful little country once again. That's definitely something to do over the next kind of year or two, fingers crossed. But for this review we are going to visit a brewery that I am very, very interested in. I've known about these guys for quite a while, and they are so far Austria's first and only Trappist brewery, so I think this one will be very interesting. We're going to go to a little place called Engelhartszell and the Donau. Donau as in the river, if I remember correctly, which is in the Untitled in Oberösterreich, one of the 9, I think it is, Bundesländer in Austria. So we're going to have a look at my first beer from Brauerei Stift Engelszell. This one is the Trappisten Weisse, which comes in at 4.9% ABV, and I think this will be a really interesting beer. They've got 3 beers that are Belgian styles. They've got a Belgian, I think it's a kind of blonde paleo type beer. They've got one that is a Double, and they've also got a Quadruple as well, and they also have a Zwickel, which is quite interesting. So it's interesting that there's a Trappist brewery brewing sort of German style beers. Actually, I think that is a really interesting thing. So hopefully this turns out to be a very nice beer. Cool to finally get around to reviewing a beer from the Austrian Trappist brewery. These guys, I believe, are the 8th Trappist brewery to be welcomed into the International Trappist Association. They're quite new compared to some of the others, but hopefully their beer turns out to be very, very nice. And we got this beer here in Sweden on the 13th of March 2020 through the Tillfälligt Sortiment, formerly the Små Partiers in Systembolaget. So yeah, kudos to them for bringing this one through, and hopefully we manage to get some of the other Engelszell beers at some point soon. I think they have been through at different points and I just haven't managed to try them. Since this is an Austrian review as well, a big shout out to Wolfgang Bohm, who runs the Katzenfett channel. He hasn't been active for a wee while from what I've seen, but he has some great videos there where he reviews Austrian craft beers, some of the more traditional Austrian beers, as well as things from other countries. Very nice guy, very funny guy actually as well, and from watching these German reviews, most of his things are in German. There are 1 or 2 videos there in English, but he does a lot of cooking and things like that as well. So if you are watching from Austria or you're a German speaker, I would recommend that you check out his videos. He's got some really nice cooking and beer videos down there as well. So I'll try and remember to put the link to his channel down in the description below, and please do give him your patronage. But yeah, cool to return to Austria again after such a long time, and hopefully this turns out to be a good beer. Definitely interested to introduce one of the other Trappist breweries to you here on the channel. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery and the abbey before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Brauerei Stift Engelszell. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for the Austrian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, but unfortunately not all that often, because Austrian beer is very difficult to get a hold of, sadly. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Brauerei Stift Engelszell. So, the Engelszell Abbey, as you've gathered already, is a Trappist monastery, and it's based in Engelhartszell and the Donau, as in the river. In the Untitled in Oberösterreich in northwestern Austria, one of the 9 Bundesländer in Austria from what I gather. So the abbey itself was founded as a Cistercian monastery back in 1293 by Bernhard of Prambach, who was the Bishop of Passau. He was joined by monks from the Wilhering Abbey, And after the Protestant Reformation, this abbey actually went into private ownership because it began to suffer both spiritually and financially over the years. But from 1618 onward, the Wilhering Abbey put in a lot of money to restore it. But the abbey unfortunately suffered a fire on Easter Sunday of 1699, and this returned the abbey to the previous financial plight. But in 1746, Abbot Leopold Reichel, who was the last of the common observance abbots, he was appointed and managed to rebuild the finances, and he built the present-day Abbey Church, which is still there. And it's quite impressive, actually, if you go and look at it. I'm not really big into the whole Christianity thing, but I have to say some of the artwork and some of the architecture in these churches is pretty damn impressive. But the abbey was then dissolved in 1786 by Emperor Joseph II, and the abbey buildings became residencies and factories and things like this for a number of years. In 1925 then, Engelszell was refounded as a Trappist monastery by refugee monks from Germany who'd actually been expelled from the Olenberg Abbey in Alsace, which is, you know, kind of eastern France. That was of course part of France, and then it went to Germany after the Franco-Prussian War, and then Germany reunited, and then after the First World War it went back to the French again. So turbulent times in that part of the world. But the abbey was established originally as a priory, and then it was elevated to abbey status in 1931, with the former prior Gregorius S. Vogel being appointed as the abbot at the same time. So the abbey was then confiscated by the Gestapo in 1939, and the 73 members of the community were evicted. Some of the monks were apparently killed at Dachau and some of the other concentration camps throughout the Third Reich, but others were drafted into the Wehrmacht. And following the end of the Second World War in 1945, only about 1/3 of the monks returned, but they were also joined by German refugee monks who had been expelled from the Maria Stern Abbey in Bosnia, and their abbot, Bonaventura Diamant, became the abbot of the whole abbey, from what I understand. But since 1995, the abbot has been Marianus Halseder, and the brewery makes its money mainly from agricultural produce. At one point they produced cheese, which was called the Engelszell Trappisten Käse, but this has since been stopped, and they now produce a lot of beer and liqueurs as well. But in the brewery they have a 15 hectolitre brew house, and they've been recognised by the International Trappist Association since May of 2012, when they became the 8th official producer of Trappist beer. They brew the beer in the abbey, and then it's taken to be bottled at the Premonstratenser monastery in Schlegel, which is quite close by from what I understand. They basically put it in the tank on the back of the lorry, take it away there, and it is, I believe, I don't know if it's matured there actually, but I think it's bottled at this other monastery, which is quite cool. And that's what means that they can stick to the Trappist rules, if you like, because the rules with the Trappist beers are that they have to be brewed within the walls of the monastery. But at present they produce 5 different beers. There's the Nevard, which is a Belgian pale ale. I believe that one is made with some sort of local honey. There's the Benno, which is the Dubel. There's the Gregorius, which is the Quadrupel. They've got this one here, which is the Trappisten Weisse, and they've also got a Trappisten Zwickel as well, actually. And they've got 1 or 2 other beers that they've produced as special ones for special occasions, but I believe those are no longer in circulation anymore. I think it's mainly the 5 original range that I've just read to you that are available readily. So yeah, as far as I can gather, these guys are the only Trappist brewery doing sort of German style beers, and considering they're in Austria, that is not surprising at all. I know that when it comes to wheat Trappist beers, I think it's La Trappe that has a wit beer, and I think that's the only other wheat beer that is produced by the Trappist, the officially recognised Trappist breweries actually. So yeah, that's another interesting point about this one. But as far as I was able to find, that was all the information I can really tell you about Brauerei Stift Engelszell at the moment. If you want to learn more about the abbey and the religious community and things like that, you can check them out in the website. I'll put the website down there below. There's a little bit on the brewery where it tells you about the range and the different beers and things like that they do, and like I said, hopefully I can review a few more of those for you at some point over the next little while, but they don't make it up here to Sweden all that regularly. Maybe I'll have some luck over the water in Copenhagen the next time I go across there. But yeah, check out the brewery website. I think they've got Facebook and Instagram pages where they show you a lot about the brewery and what the monks are doing and things like that, which is kind of cool actually. But you can also check out the Rate Beer, Beer Advocate and Untappd pages to get a bit more information on all the different beers that they do. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this one. As I say, very excited to introduce the Austrian Trappist brewery to you. So yeah, this is quite cool. So this one is the Trappisten Weisse hell, I guess. And hell, of course, in German just means that it's a light beer. It's nothing to do with the very warm place that I'm probably going to go. But yeah, very nice. But there you can see the Engelszell shield, of course, which is pretty cool. Very sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Very sort of, can you say medieval? I don't know if it's right. No, that's medieval's a way before that. It looks very much kind of like some of the Scottish family crests that we have back home. There you can see the Engelszell bottle cap. The camera's just focusing away on that, which is quite nice. But this one comes in at 4.9% ABV. It is a Weiss beer, and they're saying that this one will go out of date on the 21st of August 2020. So it should be really nice. So without further ado then, let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting. I think this one will be really interesting, and this bottle cap will definitely need to go in my little collection actually. So let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting. And this one looks like a very clear Weiss beer actually. There's a bit of sediment in the bottom, so let's just sugar it up and try and get as much of that as we can, because a Weiss beer should always be cloudy. So yeah, I'm not sure. This one, as I say, is a Hefeweizen. It should have a good little bit of things. So one of the other things I should talk about with this review is I tend to prefer the tulip glass. You probably could serve this beer in a proper Hefeweizen glass with the wide top, and that's good for aroma and things, but personally I don't have one, and also I do actually prefer a tulip glass for these. The tulip glass, in my opinion, is the best all-rounder. The only time I really tend to change glasses in these reviews are for the German lagers and things like that, and I have my Pilsner Urquell Stein actually. I don't tend to change the glassware all that often because it's another variable that can change things a little bit. So yeah, as you can see with this one then, and as you would expect, this one has poured a nice kind of pale golden straw colour actually, which is kind of what you would expect from a Hefeweizen. It's not the haziest of Hefeweizens that you're going to come across, right enough. I don't know whether I should be technically calling this one a Weiss beer or a Hefeweizen. I think, you know, those terms are basically synonymous. I don't really think there is any difference between those two, but you know, do tell me in the comment section below, because I know there's a lot of I'm a big fan of my German style beers, but there might well be some kind of lesser known technical reason as to why you might call it a Weiss beer or a Hefeweizen. Maybe it has to be from a certain region in Germany to be known as a Hefeweizen, whereas everything else is a Weiss beer. There could be something crazy like that. But yeah, as you can see, this one's got a lovely kind of pale golden colour. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass. You could see the head on this one was a solid finger. That's fading away at the moment to just be a sort of half finger, and I would say it's a pure perfect white head on this one. It looks very, very nice. If I put my fingers behind the glass there, you can see the extent of the haze. By no means the haziest of the Hefeweizens or Weiss beers, whatever you want to say, but it still looks very, very nice. So yeah, let's have a closer look at that aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. Oh yeah, straight away it comes across as really nice and fresh. I mean, the thing with the Hefeweizens and Weiss beers, if I remember rightly, it's about 40% of your malt base tends to be wheat malt, whereas about 60% roughly is sort of pale malt, it's something else. So it's not a completely wheaty malt base. If you did, I can't imagine how thick this beer would be. It'd be insane. But yeah, the aroma coming off of this is lovely. That lovely big thick white bready wheaty note. There's a bit of that typical sort of banana, you know, that typical banana kind of sweetness, yeasty sort of thing. There's a lot of that coming out of this beer. A little bit of a kind of clovey spice. There's maybe a wee kind of touch of a sweet biscuit in there as well, like a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive or something, but that's quite minimal. It's that big doughy, bready, yeasty sort of thing. The white bready kind of notes in there as well. It's got a little bit of a kind of, as I say, there is a wee touch of a biscuity note in there, which is nice, and some of the clovey spice. It almost has a wee bit of a kind of coriander-y type thing about it, but I'm pretty sure, you know, when it's been called a Weiss, it's not going to have that. It's usually wit beers that they put a little bit of coriander into actually. But the malt base in this one, I have to say, and the yeasty qualities, because obviously the malt and the yeast kind of mix together in this style. The combination of these two things is very, very nice in this particular beer. The aroma of this one is really very nice. I would say that it's not, the wheat in this one comes across as being a little bit smoother. It's not the most pungent and astringent of wheat that you're going to come across. It does strike me as being a little bit smoother, and I think from the aroma I suspect there might be a little touch of like Pilsner malt or something in this one to make the beer a little bit more drinkable. There's just something about the sort of astringency of the aroma, if you like, that makes me wonder if there's a wee bit of Pilsner malt in this one just to kind of crispen it up and make it light and drinkable. As I've told you before in other reviews, I lived in Heidelberg. I studied chemistry in Heidelberg for a little while actually, as part of an exchange. So when I went over there at first, I loved Hefeweizens. I was obsessed with them, but then I really got into the Helles and the Dunkels, and I've always found since then, since I discovered the German lacquers, you know, I've always found Hefeweizens a little bit thick. I love them still, but I can't drink them in the volume that I used to. But I don't drink beer in the same volume that I used to, right enough. I'll do it more as a tasting thing now. But yeah, this one strikes me that it's going to be quite a crisp and light and drinkable Weizen actually, so that'll be interesting. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, you definitely get that sort of typical noble quality out of this beer. I don't know if the Austrians, I'm guessing with the amount of beer culture that they have, they probably produce their own hops. I couldn't tell you about the varieties. I mean, I know the Styrian Goldings from the Styrian Goldings from down in Slovenia, or you've got the Czech Žatec hops from up in the Czech Republic. You've got Germany just next door where there's the Hallertaus and the Tettnangers and things like that. I'm guessing that probably with it being an Austrian brewery, they will use some Austrian hop, and in terms of characteristics, if they are, it comes across very like the Sats, the Styrian Goldings, or indeed the German noble varieties. It's got a really nice, there's a little light touch of earthiness there. You can pick up some floral notes. To me though, the green side of the hops really leans more towards the kind of grassy side of things. But on the fruity side of the beer, there's a wee bit of that kind of peary apple-y sort of thing. Like I said, there's a bit of the banana type quality. So you maybe get a wee bit of a kind of apricot-y kind of thing in there as well. It's got these kind of nice light juicy sort of tropical fruits as well. It's very, very light, but I'd say it leans more towards that kind of peary, apple-y ester sort of thing that you would normally associate with a Weizen beer or Weiss beer or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, this is one that I'm very excited about. I've not had a Weizen actually in quite a wee while. That's a style that I need to explore a little bit more. I need to get some more of the different German ones to review for you here on the channel. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. This one is the Trappisten Weisse from Brauerei Stift Engelszell in Engelhartszell an der Donau in Viertel, Oberösterreich in Austria. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, prost. That's really nice actually. It is kind of what I was suspecting it might be from the aroma. On the one hand, as I say, I've not had a Weizen, a Hefeweizen Weiss beer. I've not had one of these in a good while actually, and I went into this review actually a little bit thirsty. I should have had some water first to get rid of the thirst, because I think that does change the taste of the beer a little bit. But I find this beer really very light and very drinkable. I mean, at 4.9%, it's typical sort of Central European strength, typical Czech, German, Austrian type strength, to be honest. So this is nice actually. I really like how this goes together. But yeah, this one is I really like how this goes together. It does strike me as quite a nice light and crisp Weizen. I do wonder if that might be down to the water, because you know Austria obviously is a very, very mountainous country, and I'd be curious to try some of the other traditional beers and just see how, because you get this kind of cleanliness when you have beers from Scotland or Iceland or further up here in Sweden and up in Norway as well. You really get this kind of clean feel to them, and I do wonder if that's one of the kind of characteristics you'll get from the Austrian beers as well. I mean, I've had, when I think what I've had Bevog, I've had Brew Age as well, who were really nice, but I don't really remember that. But I think they are mainly, you know, they're city breweries. They are not out in the more rural areas like this. I think this place is pretty much in the middle of the countryside actually. But I will say straight away, it is a really nice, drinkable Weizen. I'd be very curious to try their other beers now, because this, as I say, is more of a traditional Central European, German type beer. Yeah. But yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this one then, and see how we go. So straight away with this one, you feel that nice kind of pale malty, white bready quality, that blankets the middle of your tongue. I find that it sort of sweetens up a little bit the further that you go into the aftertaste as well. I mean, it's, you know, you do get a little bit more, the wheatiness kind of smoothens out, you can feel it sort of thickening up a little bit on the in the middle of your palate there, and on top, in the very centre of your tongue, you do get a little bit more of that kind of thicker, yeasty, doughy, yeasty type quality out of this one. You can feel a little bit of the kind of clovey spice as you move out from the centre of the palate, and you start to get a wee bit more of the kind of clovey spice out of this one there. And there is almost just a little bit of a very slight biscuity sweetness in the very middle of the palate, and that's where the boozy side of the beer will be coming out. But at 4.9%, you know, it's not the booziest of styles, but you know, you wouldn't expect that from a Hefeweizen actually. But yeah, I really like how this one goes together. I mean, it really is a very nice drinkable beer. As I say, if you want a Hefeweizen that is a bit lighter and drinkable, then this is one that you can find. I mean, some people might argue that the Hefeweizen is drinkable already because it's only 5%, but I always found that the heavier wheat base, I just always found these very filling, but this one I don't, which is interesting. But yeah, the malty side of this beer I think is really nice, and if you go towards the back of the palate, you do have a nice little bit of a lighter kind of crispness to this beer as well, which is great. I really like how that all goes together. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a little bit of that typical kind of noble type earthiness. As you move further forward along the sides of the palate, it gradually becomes a little bit more kind of floral, and then round the front curve of the palate you can still feel some of that floral note there, but you do have a nice little bit of a lighter grassiness there. Then behind the front curve of the tongue, you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer. So for me, if you go towards the back of that oily bubble, you get a little bit of the kind of apricot-y type note out of this one. It's a kind of soft apricot-y type thing. I don't think there's any other way really to describe it, but if you go just behind that, that's where you get the more kind of banana type flavours out of this one. I think the banana notes kind of sit in there behind the fruity part of the beer as part of the kind of yeasty, malty kind of characteristic actually, so you can really feel that behind the front of the malt, behind the back of the fruity part there, which is quite nice. But as you move further forward from that, you start to get a little bit of a kind of lemony, citrusy sort of thing out of this one, which is nice. But then you have that there's a wee bit of that kind of appley, peary type thing as well. You get that as you move further forward, and as you reach the very grassy tip of your tongue, that's where you start to get a little bit of a very slightly kind of zesty quality coming out of this one. So I really like how this how all of this goes together actually. It's a very nice, quite refreshing, crisp take on the Hefeweizen actually. As I say, I'll be very curious as to whether that's just down to the local water being, you know, from a particularly nice mountain or whatever actually. That's a really interesting point to make about this this particular beer. But I like this. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this one again, but having tried this one, I would be very curious to try the Trappisten Weisse, and I'd also be curious to try the more kind of traditional Belgian type beers actually. That would be a very interesting thing. So yeah, a really nice take on a Weiss beer Hefeweizen, this one. So yeah, give this a go if you get the chance. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, this one I would say, you know, I find this one, generally speaking, quite a sort of mid-bodied beer. The carbonation is really quite smooth in this one. It does have a little bit of crispness, as I say, at the back of the palate. There's a wee bit of an almost Pilsner type quality out of this one, which is good. But the malt base is really smooth. There's a little touch of sweetness to it. I find it thickens up as you go further into the aftertaste as well. In terms of bitterness and things like that, I think you'd be lucky to get 15 IBUs out of this. It's fairly standard that a Hefeweizen is like 10 or 15 IBUs, so not a very bitter beer at all, but really smooth and drinkable. And the fruity notes for me are quite wet. They're not quite juicy, but there's a little touch of a kind of oily quality to this one, which is really quite nice actually. So yeah, I like, as I say, I like how this goes together. For me, quite a nice drinkable and crisp take on the Weiss beer Hefeweizen style actually. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. I think this has been a nice introduction to Brauerei Stift Engelszell. This has been a really nice beer to try, and it's my first Weizen in quite a wee while actually. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one was the Trappisten Weisse from Brauerei Stift Engelszell in Engelhartszell and der Donau in Untitled Oberösterreich in Austria, just down in the middle of Europe. So yeah, really cool to introduce Austria's Trappist brewery to you for the first time, and hopefully it's not the last time either. So let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brauerei Stift Engelszell as well. And no doubt I will return to these guys at some point fairly soon. And I do need to try and get a hold of one of the Spencer beers from America, and also the Trefontainen ones actually from Italy, because those are the only two Trappist breweries that I haven't reviewed anything from yet. So that is something that I definitely want to make happen at some point soon. But thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. Do let me know some Austrian beer recommendations, and hopefully I can find some way of getting a few more Austrian beer reviews for you here on the channel. Until the next time, Slàinte just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slàinte, Skål, Prost. Make sure you check out Brauerei Stift Engelszell. Cheers.